I decided to architect a company that is entirely automated with AI and has no employees. How did that go? Let's talk about it. So welcome to Dave is Not AI. I'm Dave, an AI expert and AI skeptic. Let's get started. So this is not at all a new concept. There's a bunch of folks over the years. In fact, I think I ran into people working on this stuff in the 80s with PhD dissertations and things like that. The concept is, can we build a company that's entirely automated with AI? And obviously, it's an interesting concept, but until recently, I don't think it was very possible because we just didn't have the AI that was around to make this happen. But now we do. And now it's interesting to see if we can do it. So I understand there's going to be some haters out there, who are objecting the fact I'm looking to build a company without employees. But keep in mind, I'm not saying should we, I'm saying can we. So can we do it? But it doesn't necessarily mean should we do it. So that's another ethical decision that we're going to have to make. So this is also something that's been in the news recently. Elon Musk's latest concept, Macrohard, obviously that's a play on Microsoft, breaks new ground as fully autonomous software companies with zero human employees. Ultimately, every business function, customer care, software development, supply chain, and even negotiations is run by dedicated AI agents working together as a seamless digital workforce. So this model offers a glimpse into the future of fully automated enterprises where AI agents not only execute tasks, but also communicate, learn, and optimize the processes. So if he can do it, why can't other people do it? And actually, this has been a concept that I've been playing around with for a long period of time. In fact, I have my current generative AI architecture class working on an employee-less company, basically building it from scratch. So again, this is not getting into the question, should we? This is can we? And I think the can we question is going to be much more interesting to answer. In other words, if we can do it, it's going to be some power that we're going to have in our hands where we're able to automate things I think we probably couldn't automate, just a few years ago. And now we have AI through economies of scale. It's pretty good. And certainly agentic AI systems is growing in popularity. So we may have the ability to do this now. So let's explore the technical roadmap, focusing on the strategic use of AI agents needed to bring such a company to life. So again, this is an academic exercise. And I did go through this a few weeks ago. I spent a weekend, doing a deep dive and looking at the existing technologies out there and say, if I am going to build an employee-less company that's completely automated, what kind of company would it be? What could it do? And could it actually exist? And I think the short answer is you can do it. Now, should you do it is another question, but we do have the capability now. We do have the technology now to allow you to build a company that's entirely automated with AI and is able to get better at its job over time. So the first step is going to be architecting the AI agent ecosystem and looking at the build versus buy around this. You got to remember many of these components, including, IVR system, customer support systems, a lot of these things that are employed by, major retailers and healthcare organizations now are available for purchase. So we don't have to build these things anymore. We're able to buy them many times as a service and put them into play where they can, using automated capabilities, take care of, the normal task. And if you run a retail organization, for example, you're going to have customer service, you're going to have technical support, you're going to have returns and exchanges where people are looking to talk to human beings. And if you're able to replicate that experience using AI, then suddenly that removes an expense via the employee who's answering the phone. And so ultimately, this is something we have the capability of doing. So we need to decide which agent framework, such as open source, cloud native, proprietary multi-agent systems that we need to use to build in-house for custom workflows versus, integrating, proven third-party agent platforms for rapid deployments, or basically the other options that are out there and things that we can buy, off the shelf now. So we need to identify critical roles for AI agents, developer, negotiator, customer rep, supply chain optimizer, and select or build the agent, that specializes in these duties. And I think we're entering a world now, certainly with autonomous AI agents, where in many cases, we're not going to build these things from scratch. We're going to buy pre-built behaviors and pre-built knowledge models that are going to be able to be deployed for us and for our uses and our purposes, actually at a very good price, based on what I'm seeing out there. And they're only going to get better. Keep in mind, when you employ these agents within a multi-agent system, they're able to learn as they do their jobs. In other words, as they interact with people, as they, solve technical support problems, things like that, they're able to, in essence, get better at their jobs through augmenting their knowledge models. That's pretty cool. Many times we're not able to do that as well as human beings. So next we need to look at AI agents for fully automated, customer service systems and the viability of doing that. So we're going to have to deploy conversational AI agents equipped with advanced, NLU and NLP, which is able to resolve technical support questions, process returns, manage complaints, without, in many cases, escalating these things to humans. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that we're not going to build a system that may have a human in the loop for some sort of escalated roles and tasks. But again, we can certainly build something that doesn't need human beings in the loop to make this happen. But I think in many of these systems, they're going to have a human that's going to be able to deal with escalated issues, customer service issues, things like that. So you need to kind of keep that in mind, that it's not necessarily something that's going to be 100% without any human intervention, but we're going to minimize that as much as possible. We're able to chain agents together, allowing one to handle intake, another to solve technical issues, and another to process refunds, collaborating in real time and escalating only to other agents as needed and only to human beings as needed. So again, the agents basically function like the employees of a company, and I always describe this when I teach agentic AI. In other words, we're looking at a collection of agents that are doing particular things that they're good at. In other words, and we're creating different personas from these autonomous agents, so they're able to carry out different roles and responsibilities. So in other words, one agent may be, focused on handling returns, the other agent may be focused on technical support, the other agents may be focused on logistics. And as we do that, they're also able to interact one to another. So not only do they get better as individual agents, but they get better as a group. So the upside of this is there's going to be no additional, no training out of the gate. These agents should be trained on what their purpose is and what their personas is and the role they're going to have to play. And the great thing is they're going to get smarter over time as they build their knowledge models, as they learn, as they do their jobs. So another function would be autonomous product development by AI agents. So we're able to use developer agents that write, test, and refactor software, autonomously pushing, commits through CI/CD pipelines. So again, removing the developers from the loop, and then putting different specialized agents that are in essence pushing the software development lifecycle through the dev tool chain to get it from inception, into production. So we're able to do things like employ QA agents that generates synthetic test data, identify bugs, and verify releases before deployment, automatically interacting, with developer agents for the fixes. Now, you got to admit, anybody who's even skeptical around AI, we're heading to this direction. I think ultimately, it's not only agents that are able to do the development of the systems, in other words, write the code, but we're certainly going to have the automated testing, automated, deployment, automated quality assurance, and even managing customer interactions. So we're able to look at the customer requirements as they change and put those in pretty much is going to be record time, into the development chain where it comes out the other end as working software. So in other words, the speed of need or ability to react to, new requirements is going to be second to none. So if you're building a company like this that's going to completely automate those systems, I think the benefit is going to be that. In other words, your ability to do software development and deployment, if you do it correctly and build the agents correctly, almost perfectly, and not having to deal with human beings where people get sick and make mistakes and things like that. That doesn't mean human beings are a bad thing, but we have to look at what we're good at and what we're not good at. So the next function would be, if you're a product organization, for example, would be AI supplier negotiation and management agents that are going to be there. So we're able to deploy negotiation agents to research supplier options, communicate RFPs, analyze, counteroffers, and finalize deals, leveraging real-time market data. And this is very much like the case study we're doing in the generative AI class. In other words, we're simulating a company that's able to sell things online, but instead of building something, which is going to add some complexity to it, in other words, as a manufacturing organization, they're buying things from suppliers. But of course, you have to negotiate with the suppliers, negotiate logistics, negotiate price, figure out good markups, things like that. And that becomes, kind of a specialty that some agents are able to take on. We're able to link procurement agents to smart contract platforms to execute purchases, monitor terms, and trigger payment. And this is entirely without human intervention. So in other words, we'll be dealing with humans, but most of these negotiations occur over email anyway. And they'll be able to use text exchange, email exchange, even IVR exchange using voice response, using NLP, natural language processing, to communicate with humans in ways that are going to be, reasonable for the humans that we're talking to, and the ability to maximize negotiation of price, and doing so through having almost perfect knowledge of what everybody else is paying for at the time, because at the same time the agent's negotiating, they're able to reach out automatically to get to the real-time data and then make decisions based on the real-time data. That's pretty good. So the next function I looked at was logistics and fulfillment, which are going to be coordinated by agents. So we're able to set up logistic agents that monitor inventory, place restock orders, optimize shipping methods, and manage real exceptions, such as delays, lost shipments, things like that, by communicating with carrier APIs and warehouse robots. So the ability, and I think in many instances, is going to be agent to agent, intercompany, where they're communicating one to another to solve many of these issues. And obviously, that's better than we do it now. We're leaving voicemails or sending emails, and it takes several hours, sometimes several days, to solve many of these issues. It's able to do so in real time. So these agents can synchronize directly with customer service agents to provide live updates to customers on shipping and delivery. And that's going to be an advantage of this. In other words, the customers are going to be able to get things done at a high rate of speed because there's no latency in waiting for human beings to respond to emails or respond to calls or return your calls, things like that. The agents should be able to do it in somewhere of near real time. So in other words, as a shipment is lost, you make it aware to the company, therefore make it aware to a shipping agents able to take corrective action to figure out where your shipment went, how to resolve the issue, and doing so in a couple of minutes, versus a couple of days. And you got to admit, as we, as consumers out there, we like things to operate in a fast way, in a deliberate way. And this will provide the capability of doing that. So the next function I looked at was automated dispute and exception handling agents. So obviously things are going to go wrong, and we have to have the ability to solve these issues as well, and without looping humans in for each and every issue. So program mediation agents review and resolve disputes with customers and suppliers referencing prior resolution contracts and policies within their knowledge models. In other words, they do more of this resolution of many of these issues. They're able to figure out the best path to make it happen through trial and error, very much like us humans. And artificial intelligence, of course, mimics intelligence. So these agents escalate only to a master agent, for edge cases, ensuring consistency and self-improvement. So there is a hierarchy that works within these agentic-based frameworks, and typically a multi-agent system. And so we have supervisor agents that will control the action of the worker agents who are actually resolving many of the issues. And you'll see escalation of problems, from the worker agents into the supervisor agents, very much like you see in a call center. Everybody's asked for a manager when they've gotten frustrated with somebody who's on the phone who's providing customer service. And this is very similar. Now, of course, the idea they're going to work together in very quick and responsive ways. So we're not going to have latency in terms of communicating one to another, and the ability to find these issues and resolve these issues, at the speed of need. And so the advantage of running an employee-less business is the fact that we're able to do things in a rapid fashion and do things in a deliberate fashion. That doesn't mean we're able to do everything. Obviously there's some limitations to setting up these things, and we're going to have to, figure out better ways to do it. We're going to have to iterate through the design and development of these systems as well. And we're finding that out as we're going through this, architecture with my class. But at the end of the day, for some functions, for some businesses, it may be better. Next, we have to deal with orchestration, which is the process that sits above the agents that figures out how they're going to interact one to another. We're able to implement orchestration layer, a managed agent, for example, overseeing all agents, communication, tasks, task assignments into performance analytics, dynamically rebalancing workloads and spinning up new agents as needed. This is critical to the success of this because it's not that hard to build the agents that do the particular personas and take on the particular roles and tasks that are going to run within the company. But the ability to orchestrate these things so they're operating in the correct sequence and doing things in the correct way is absolutely going to be imperative. So we're able to use process mining AI to identify inefficiencies and direct orchestrator agents to optimize workflow automatically. So not only are you doing the optimization of how these agents are interacting one to another, but you're able to do optimization ongoing. And so we're always going to be continuously improving the interactions of the agents. And so at the orchestration level, we're going to be doing trial and error to figure out the best path to make those things happen. And again, if you build this multi-agent system correctly, you'll have the ability to do that. So next, and the final thing to consider would be autonomous compliance. So security and monitoring agents are able to deal with compliance and restrictions that are placed on us around the compliance with laws. You got to remember, if we're running a company, we're not only dealing with laws and regulations that are going to be part of where the company exists, in other words, the United States, for example, but also all the countries that we're doing business in. We have to consider the rules and regulations within those companies. And obviously, that's a complex array of things to consider. If we have security and compliance agents, they're able to carry that out for us. So we're able to deploy compliance agents to track, evolving regulations, audit interactions, and update processes, under their own authority. So we're able to monitor these processes to make sure we're in compliance. And I think that's going to be very important. And certainly if you've fallen out of compliance and you get caught, you're going to get a rather stiff fine from the organization, from the law enforcement branch of the country or municipality that you're working in. So security agents continuously monitor for threats, patch vulnerabilities, and ensure data privacy, and autonomously coordinating with other agents for mitigation and reporting. Again, some of the agents that we're building are going to have to be dealing with security and the ability to monitor things and make sure, we're not getting scammed, we're not opening ourselves up for ransomware attacks or, getting our information breached, things like that. And that's going to be a fairly complex thing to go through. So your ability to, in essence, build security into the system by having agentic-based deployments and having agents that have the persona of dealing with the security system is going to be on the critical path. So building a company powered exclusively by AI agents means engineering and robust security. In other words, these are not going to be easy things to build, but they may be worth building for some purposes. And ever-evolving workforce, that never sleeps, never forgets, and continuously improves their behaviors, their conduct, their tasks. They optimize themselves ongoing. So the next frontier is not just automating individual processes, it's enabling collaborative AI agents to talk, negotiate, and problem solve together at every level of business. So we're able to look at, and you got to remember, I'm just highlighting some of the problems that we need to solve in these systems. When I actually, mocked up a employee-less, fully autonomous AI-driven company, it was hundreds of things that you have to consider in how they interact one to another. And, that would be a 5-hour video. But those are just a sampling of some of the issues that you need to solve and applying AI to make the solutions. Also keep in mind that AI isn't always the right answer for everything. In some of these issues, simple processing, simple orchestration is going to be just fine. And we should only use AI if there's an application for it, there's a use case for it. It shouldn't be used at every step of the way. We're just overcomplicating and make the system, more complex and more costly if we're doing that. So following these technical steps, it unlocks scale, agility, and innovation needed to compete in a world where people may be optimal, but intelligent, adaptable agents, ultimately are going to be indispensable for, making us humans doing the best we can. And so many of these things, you'll notice the task in play are mundane things. In other words, not to diminish, people who carry on these roles within these companies, but human beings are creative, innovative creatures, and your ability to do things over and over again is going to be something we're not as good at doing versus, some sort of an automated system that has the capability of thinking. So these AI agents, if you paid attention as we went through it, they're doing very tactical tasks. In other words, they're not doing things that are strategic to the organization. And that's the role we want them to play. But again, the question is, we looked at this and we said, can we? And I think we can. Should we? That's another question. And you want to chime in below in the comments and let me know what you think. Let me know if these are something we should pursue, or this is an ethical concern where we should kind of stop and think about what we're doing. And again, I've architected this system, haven't built it yet. I think other organizations are out there looking to build things like this. We'll see how they do. Certainly Elon Musk in his new venture of a completely AI agent run company. It'll be interesting to see how that one does. So anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other videos on this channel. Also check out my InfoWorld Cloud Computing blog, my 100+ LinkedIn Learning courses, and of course my Generative AI Architecture course out on Go Cloud Careers. And finally, my latest book, An Insider's Guide to Cloud Computing. So till next week, you guys stay very, very safe. Later.